I don't think this is blowing over, guys. Plan for your future accordingly, because I do think this is going to get pretty bad in terms of shortages. And I just think people are completely sleeping on this stuff, like how bad it's going to get. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
I mean, I'm good. It was a longer, kind of a longer weekend for us because you work on the weekend. So it was a more relaxed Sunday evening for you. But we usually record Sundays, and my parents were visiting in Nashville as they always do for Easter, and I was like, we could record while they're here. I don't know if I want to. And then Carbon Cry told me he just wants a full Easter weekend off, like 3 or 4 days in a row. And I'm like, perfect. An excuse to just record Monday night. And I'll have to stay up a little late with Gerard. But I think even Gerard, like, we all kind of wanted a little bit of a break this weekend. And so I think we can be forgiven on one of the larger holidays, at least for Christians.
Yeah.
Probably.
Give us a break. Come on.
Come on, give us some of them eggs, man.
Yeah.
Which we all know rabbits lay.
Yes, and that's a common saying, give us some eggs.
But let's just jump into it. All right. We have one correction. Falto writes in, and he says, this is the meaning behind Luigi wins by doing nothing. As in the last news episode, you guys were not sure why someone said, is this a Luigi win situation? And I guess someone, like, if you just don't touch them in the beginning in some Mario Party mini games. There are videos online. Google it, everybody. You can watch Luigi just win by default, sitting there doing nothing in several mini games. There's some mini games where supposedly you should just not move if you're feeling lazy. So
and
now we know what that means. I had no idea what people meant before.
Yes, and Falto cited Know Your Meme, shockingly one of the better websites at citing and documenting the history of memes of all things.
To give proper credit.
Yes, they do a very, very comprehensive articles on the origins and histories of memes, which is I just think it's funny that somebody cares that much about the history of memes.
And in many ways, pathetic that there's more journalism being put into where memes come from than people who call themselves journalists put into really sourcing anything these days, especially in the tech space.
Yes, I really love reading news articles, like and just the normal press too, and like they hyperlink something to make it look like it's a citation. And then that hyperlink just leads you to like all of the stories on their website that mention that thing. That's a really fun thing that they do a lot of the
time. All right. With that out of the way, let us move on to something that wasn't fun from last week with story number 1. PS5 prices increased. Quoting from Sony from their blog, with continued pressure in the global economic landscape, we've made the decision to increase the prices of PS5, PS5 Pro, and even the PlayStation Portable remote player globally. We know that price changes impact our community. After careful evaluation, we found this was a necessary step to ensure we can continue delivering innovative, high-quality gaming experiences for players worldwide. Really, yes, there's not that much shocking here. The only thing shocking is that it took Sony this long to push up their prices again. Right now, they stand at, after this price increase, PS5, $650, PS5 Digital, $600, PS5 Pro, $900, which is pretty crazy in my opinion. Then, of course, we'll have on screen the other places as well. It's whatever adjusted for currency in other countries. However, it does make you wonder why now a little bit when you consider they're really just catching up to Xbox, who's been charging, entirely laughable prices for months now. That extra $100 tacked on top of the base PS5 really is just moving it to Xbox prices from last October. Meanwhile, PS5 Pro, Sony's margin machine, is finally not cheaper than the highest end Xbox, the one that just comes with 2 terabytes. We all knew this was going to happen, though, eventually. Yes, Sony has been better prepared than most to survive the RAM apocalypse, but the price increases began due to Trump's tariffs in the beginning, then the RAM apocalypse, and then now even more chaos courtesy of Trump and Iran. At least Sony still makes gaming devices that are somewhat affordable compared to Xbox, which seems to be trickling out, and gaming PCs being most hit by the memory supply chain destruction, at least if you insist on buying Nvidia. So, yeah, I already talked about this with Leo, as this news dropped right before we started recording, basically. So that was actually good timing for us last week. But I haven't talked about this with you yet, Dan. What do you think about the PS5 price increases?
Well, I mean, it sucks, but this is the world we're living in, and like, I don't know. I do think depending on how things develop, just with history in general, this really is just going to be like a decade and a generation that I feel like people are just going to want to kind of forget about a little bit.
Yeah.
Because this console generation, with this, I mean, the Series X has been on life support for, if we even want to call it on the Series X has been taken off life support like 2 years ago.
It was on life support. They took it off and they raised the prices. Yeah.
And it refuses to die.
It's been months where they've been sitting next to
well, like, I mean, yeah, the Series X, like, I think there's an argument to be made years that's been dead or dying. And this is just, I mean, the PS5 at the end of the day, if you look at total sales, like, it's going to be a success. It's going to be it's probably going to cross that 100 million threshold, I think, unless like sales really sputter out in this last year.
They could, to be fair. I think they actually could, but go on.
But I mean, what I was going to say is that, like, this generation really is just, on some ways, I think good. Like, the hardware itself, including the Xbox, I think both good hardware.
No, and I want to interject because I was really thinking to myself the other day, like, if I were to rank the generations that were most interesting to me, it would be PS3, but then also probably 360 from Xbox's side. And then it would be now, I think, PS5 and Series X for sure more interesting to me than PS4 and Xbox One. And then, I don't know, I'd probably put, I guess maybe actually even PS2 and the original Xbox, which was pretty powerful for its time, above the PS4. Like, I actually think this wasn't the worst generation, just for in my opinion.
I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on what you mean by interesting. Like the PS4, I think
I'd just say generations I think of favorably.
Okay, because like to me, the mid PS3 to PS4 or mid PS3 60, I guess I'll say, because the 360 was also super influential during that generation, and then the PS4 onwards, I just thought was like, for gaming itself was a very good time, even if the hardware in a lot of ways kind of got a little boring there at the end, because like the PS4,
long in the tooth,
I think the PS4 just, generally speaking, had very good games on it. The PS3 and 360, that was just that period where it felt like every month a AAA game was coming out.
Again, that's why I'd say PS3 and 360 are the most interesting. But Dan, I'm going to jump in. For me, PS4 is just a shitty PC. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, when I look back on it, we played PC far more often, or should I say we played PlayStation less often than we do now. And that's because the thing, even early in the PS4 gen, the only thing it had going for it was that it was cheap. It ran games at 1080p 30. I was not as excited to play the PS. Bloodborne was great. Some of the exclusives were great. But outside of that, it's like I would always be choosing things on PC because it ran so much better, even a modest PC.
Yeah, and then the PS5 is just interesting to me because like I actually do use my PS5 a lot. I don't regret buying it at all, but it's just weird. We've talked about this ad nauseum, so I don't want to like keep hammering it. But like Sony just really dropped the ball on software this generation. But for quality of life, the PS5 really, I think, might be the biggest the biggest jump in a generation that we've ever really seen. Like,
well, it depends. Again, PS3 added the ability to even talk about quality of life.
Yeah, that's true. And then the PS4 was really just like, well, what if this just worked a lot better? And then the PS5, to me, really just doesn't have any of those weird hiccups or idiosyncrasies that like the PS3 and PS4 did. So from that perspective, the PS5 is great, but like, I don't know, like they dropped the ball, I think, a lot on software. And I do think this price increase is kind of just the soft end of this generation. Like,
I think so.
I don't think I would recommend getting a PS5 at this point. Like, I don't get why you would anymore. And that goes the same for pretty much all hardware these days.
Except for the Switch 2. Switch 2 at 450
yeah,
kind of good now.
Yeah, the Switch 2 is that 450 is suddenly seeming real nice, unless that ends up going to like 550 or something in the next month. But I mean, it's just an extension of PC where I say, yeah, don't buy a PC unless you like have to this year. And the main difference for a PC and PS5 really is like sometimes you do kind of just have to buy a PC, and that argument is that's a lot less significant with a PS5 because consoles are more of a luxury item in our opinion, I should say.
No, the data actually suggests that. I think in the West, gaming PCs are seen as luxury items, and it's because in the West they have more money than in a lot of other countries. Like, if you're in Europe or the United States or Canada or even really Mexico, you have more money than a lot of other countries that I could list that are poorer than those countries. But you're in this sweet spot where it's like you have the money for a $500 or I guess up to $900 box now, but you don't have the money for a $2,000 box. You have to understand that like in India, the $500 box is a luxury, and actually it's a $200 gaming PC they scrounge together. That is the main way most people on Earth game. On the whole, consoles are actually, I remember reading articles about this recently, luxury devices if you don't think of it from a Western perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that just makes sense. Like, to me, inherently, like it's a PC has far more utility than a PS5 does. Now, I guess if you're just a person that likes to play video games and like watch things on streaming, I mean, maybe a PS5 or Series X is your best option. But like, back to my point though, like I just don't see, like, I think there's a reason you could conceive of why you would need to build a PC this year. Just don't do it if you don't have to. And then if you're still on a PS4, frankly,
or especially PS4 Pro.
Yeah, frankly, I think you're just one of those people that's holding out for this generation and not gonna upgrade really. And my recommendation is finally just, keep holding out unless your PS4 breaks.
Or you can't wait a year to play GTA 6.
Yeah, but even if
it comes out this year, I guess we actually don't know that really.
True. Yeah, but like even if your PS4 breaks, I mean, I think I would recommend, can you get by on something else for the time being and just wait until the PS6 comes out? Because it's in a year, it's going to be a better device for, I think, probably around the same price as a PS5 right now. Like, just wait for that if you can. I really do think that the PS5 sales are just going to slow to a halt now because, like, I mean, this really is the first time we've ever seen this in a console generation. The prices just steadily increase to the point that they're now like 30% higher if I'm doing that. Yeah.
It depends how you count it because the digital is now 600. Digital before was 400, 50% higher. Now you couldn't add a disk drive before, so there's some argument there, I guess.
Yeah,
and
but
Pro
then
was 700, 750 or something, and now it's everything's up at least 20%, and I would argue the digital's up 50.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to be super highly critical of Sony because I feel like that's just or Xbox, frankly, because like that's just kind of the default response you see online, and I think it misses the point that like
screaming this isn't pro-consumer without noticing World War III is happening and thousands of people are dying, and actually your PS5 price going up is relatively not a big deal compared to that stuff causing it.
Yeah, and this isn't like quote unquote Sony or Microsoft greed. This is just the reality of a market where we're doing tariffs constantly for no reason. For no reason.
You're saying Americans.
The U.S. is for no reason really. The U.S. is starting random wars throughout the world, and right now one of the key shipping lanes in the entire planet. And you also have I think a technology and AI that's increasingly driving the stock market to be detached from reality, and that's
also eating up all of our RAM. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, in the episode. That's driving RAM prices up independently of those two other things I just mentioned. And yeah, that's how you go from last generation of PS4 costing $400 at the start to what, $250 at the end or something like that a lot of the time, or PS3 was like
690 or something.
Yeah, PS3 was 600 at the start and 200, 190 at the end. And now,
to be fair, that one didn't even, you had to manually open the Foreman grill, and I believe it came with 32 gigabytes of storage or something, like a flash drive was in it instead of a hard drive. So there was reductions in quality from the main one, but it was reductions in quality, not increases in price. I guess that's one thing you can say is, what do you want? At the end of the PS3 generations, the Foreman grill version barely had storage, lacked USB ports, lacked backwards compatibility. Do you want shrinkflation or inflation? And this gen, it's inflation.
But the PS3, the George Foreman PS3 version at least did have the added functionality of draining grease when you wanted to fry burgers on it. So
you did have that.
But yeah, I mean, this kind of just sucks, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really angry at any of the players that are making these decisions, because I just think it's kind of a necessity. Yeah, it's kind of a necessity. This is the tail end of a generation. I mean, I don't think you want to at least be making a meager profit, or at least not losing a ton of money on every console sale.
Well, let me jump in there too, because and just to be clear, we already did a full 1 hour podcast talking about this in FSR 5, that's Die Shrink 174. So join the Patreon to get access to that. But one thing I brought up in that, and I think I brought up with Leo on the last Broken Silicon that I must bring up again, is there's people that are like, well, this is such a large increase, they're also adding higher profit margins. And I don't know, maybe they are, but I would suggest the best evidence that they probably aren't going completely crazy, at least with profit margins, is that in 2006 November, a PS3 was $599. In today's money, that's $971. That is the PS5 Pro with a disk drive added. So that suggests to you that it's almost 1-to-1 with them trying to just not lose money. Remember, the PS3 was losing money at the time. So I don't know. Maybe they're actually losing money. I doubt they are, but I don't think the margins are as high as they were when they launched the PS5 Pro, where I think it was probably $200 or $100. Going on to the PS4, that was $399 in November of 2013. In today's money, that's $559. And so it's like, yeah, I guess the digital 600, but man, is it bigger and have more capabilities and use more basically everything. And then 650. So you could argue maybe Sony, because I believe the PS4 launched with like a 5% profit loss is what I remember from back then.
Wait, did you say sorry, I missed. Did you say the PS4 did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was losing like $10 to $20, I believe. And then within half a year, they're profiting about $10 to $20 is what I remember seeing.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, if you buy 2 games, when you buy it, they're pretty much breaking even.
But so if we align even the PS5 disc with the PS4 from 2013, it's like, okay, so let's say they were breaking even at 560 with the inflation calculator, which we don't know that at all. Even then, you're like saying, what, they're making a 10% profit, 15 at most. To me, it looks like Sony, if they're making a profit, it's slight still. I don't think they're making $200 on each one of these things, and if in fact, I would argue, let's say they're making a $50 profit on the PS5 right now, all of them, and maybe 100 on the Pro. They know that the price of gas could go to $6 soon, and they know that's going to continue to increase prices. So they're ripping off the Band-Aid, pricing themselves in line with the Xbox because they think it's probably going to get worse. And so I don't really see this as them. I think they probably had a hard decision where they're like, well, if we increase the price of the PS5 due to inflation, which is what Xbox already did, we can still probably price it below. But then what if we have to increase the price again? Then people get mad at us twice. Shouldn't we just rip the Band-Aid fully off and also say, hey, assholes, if they're going to charge $800 for a Series X, we're charging $900 for a PS5 Pro. That's wildly a better product. So like, I think that's what they decided is also we're not going to debase our brand by pricing ourselves below a Series S because that makes no sense.
Yeah. And like, let's say they decided instead to do the, I guess higher risk, higher reward strategy of like going $800 at first or something. I don't think the press coverage would be substantially more positive than what we're getting right now with the $900 PS5 Pro.
No, I don't think so. And remember, they increased the price, I believe, already once. And then during Black Friday last year, they dropped it to MSRP or lower for some models or something. So they reserve the right to have big Black Friday sales every year still. And I bet they do this year. If they can, we'll see if they even can. But yeah, I mean, that's basically my thoughts. Outside of that, all I want to do is plug that I sent you something on Facebook, Dan. This was the thumbnail for the Sacred Symbols episode reacting to the price increases. And I think it's hilarious myself.
Jesus.
It's Colin Moriarty's face over where George Bush was in the college room when 9/11 happened and being whispered to. And he would not make that thumbnail, or they would not go with that thumbnail because he's much more gaming oriented than we're more hardware oriented. We both talk about business, but we're more on the hardware. He's more on the actually playing the game side. And he would not make that thumbnail if his community wasn't freaking out. So I understand that people are freaking out. Actually, he's probably going to be the next guest on Broken Silicon. We'll talk about this directly. So should be good. But look at it. I guess here's where I'll say the thing that hopefully stops some of the downvotes, because I think people think we're a little too glib, or we're not pro gamer enough, or we don't feel the common man, like some of that criticism of Queen Elizabeth or something, where it's like, well, she never cries, so how do we know she cares about us? It's like, look, this is how we talk. We think in a very analytical, and we think of it in a very abstract way where we don't think about how it's going to affect us in a lot of ways. But we understand this sucks. And to the people that say this will hurt them, I think this will lower PlayStation 5 sales, like you said, Dan. I'm not saying this is like good or like deal with it. I do think this is going to affect PlayStation 5 sales. And the only good thing is I think Sony hits pedal to the metal on PS6 and designs it from the ground up to be as cheap as possible. And you might say, well, the silicon, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but look at the size of the PS5. Look at how it was designed. This is clearly a times of plenty console like the PS3 that was designed to be big and flashy and dominant and less to take up as little space as possible, like the PS4 was. And I really do think what they're going to do is have like a big Black Friday sale this year. And then they're probably just going to stop production mid next year and try to get to PS6 as quickly as possible. It's probably going to be about the same price, if not less. And they'd rather sell you that. So I think this accelerates next gen, actually, possibly. Again, unless the supply chain gets so bad that they can't launch it, which I don't think that's going to happen yet.
Yeah. And just a couple more thoughts on what you said there. So if your thought is like these guys seem really uncritical or just deal with it. I mean, I don't think I guess I get where, like, if you're particularly mad, that might be the impression you get. But like the first thing we opened with is saying, we think this generation is dead. Don't buy a PS5 anymore. So that's my recommendation. Don't buy a PS5 anymore. I'm just really trying to clarify, like, if you're getting mad about this, maybe direct your ire in the correct parties rather than the parties
you should be mad, but you should be mad at what's causing energy prices to go up.
Yeah,
not Sony and Microsoft.
Yeah, rather than getting mad at parties that are responding to a pretty garbage situation that they're in, because like I really don't know what Sony does here, because frankly, like you said, this could accelerate next gen. I think Sony's best bet moving forward in a market like, or a global market like this now is just trying to get the PS7 out, or
PS6.
PS7, PS6
That's
out.
how ahead we are, guys. We're thinking about the PS7 while you're thinking about the PS6.
Get the PS6 out as fast as possible, because frankly, I don't think there's any reality where they could do the general like stepping thing where like, okay, you get the enthusiastic people in the door at the high price. Then a couple years later, you get the people that care less in with a lower price. You're not going to get a PS5 at $300 unless Sony wants to lose $500 on a PS5 every time they sell one. So you're not going to get those PS4 holdouts at this point anymore. Okay, the last few trickles of people that are going to buy a PS5 then I guess try to make some minimal amount of money off it, so you make money off of software sales quicker, and then get the people that are still on the PS4, PS4 Pro with the PS6 at launch with something that's hopefully low priced enough that, I mean, maybe we kind of see a repeat of the PS4 generation in a lot of ways. Like, I think that could be where we're going.
Yeah. So I don't really know what else there is to say. It sucks. We know it sucks. I really like what you said. Get angry at the right people, for causing this. That's what you need to do. And we'll get to this in the next story, but like, they really have an opening here with the PlayStation 6S, I think, if they do decide to make that. And at this point, I really think they should. This piece of content is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch is a private, ad-free personal finance platform that brings all of your accounts into one clean dashboard. It automatically tracks your spending and net worth and helps you stay financially aligned by, allowing you to control your finances without micromanaging them and keeping them all in one place, so you don't get dozens of notifications that you feel like you have to pay attention to every day. And you know what I mean, right? Like if you have a few bank accounts, maybe a credit card or two and a debit card, not to mention the bills that you pay for where you live, you'll get all of these notifications from all of these different places. And because it involves your money, well, speaking for myself, at least earlier before Monarch Money, I'd feel like I have to pay attention to every single little one. It's my money. I have to pay attention to it. But there's just so much. And you don't have to do that with Monarch Money. It's all in one place. And the better control is further accelerated by AI-powered insights as well that summarize important things like where spending has increased, unusual transactions, and where total net worth changes are coming from. Again, all in one place, despite pulling from tons of different things that would all be bothering you separately usually. Plus, it allows you also to confidently monitor your progress. Monarch lets you watch your net worth, project it out, and help you come up with and keep to goals having to do with paying down debt and making investments. This is easy, cross-platform, flexible budgeting. Plus, it syncs with 13,000 plus institutions. It's fast and has a secure setup with all major banks and credit cards and brokerages. And it's even couples ready, so partners can share and monitor their finances together. So if you want these features in your life and you also want to support Moore's Law is Dead, you can start a free trial and get 50% off your first year of Total Money Clarity using my link below and using offer code MOORE50. That's MOORE50. Doing so doesn't just help you monitor your finances, it also helps Moore's Law is Dead directly. So support Moore's Law is Dead by starting a free trial with Monarch Money through the link below today. Toki writes in and says, apart from Astrobot and Astrobot's Playroom, it feels like hardly any PS5 games really use the DualSense haptics to its full potential. I don't know, even like a Resident Evil game, like things can lock in a different way. And like Borderlands 3, and I think 4 use them in a really interesting way with like the triggers feeling different between guns. And there's so many different guns. So like, there are games that use them well. My personal opinion is you just shouldn't assume every game needs to be crazy. Like Metro Exodus, my friend Brock tells me is crazy on PS5 with the haptics, but he says, which features will the PS6 introduce that zero developers will actually make use of? And he guesses, the way I take this is what should they change? And my answer is nothing with the controller. But what do you think?
Oh yeah. I mean, just on my thoughts about haptics in general, like I do think haptics have been generally pretty well used. Obviously, like when Sony releases, Sony always tries to add some new gimmick, I feel like, to their controllers every generation. So if you made me bet money, I bet the DualSense 2 is probably what it will be called. I bet that has some new gimmick. Every time that happens, like they have a showcase game that really shows off all of the things that you can do with it. And Astrobot probably is the game that makes the best use of the haptics. But like you said, there's Borderlands. I think which Call of Duty game? I can't remember. One of the early Call of Duty games made pretty good use of haptics. And I think like haptics have just become like a feature that you see used to some extent in every game. The haptics are a weird thing where I think they really do help with immersion a lot in games, but there is a case to be made that like, especially in like competitive multiplayer, you're kind of at a disadvantage in some ways with haptics because like if they do things with like trigger pulls, it makes it more immersive.
Rock did say that with Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition. He said that it was immersive, but his finger was actually getting tired with some of the weapons.
Yeah, so it's like if you want like a gun that has like a super heavy trigger pull, you're actually kind of at a disadvantage with that. So I don't really know what you do there. Then with like the new the DualSense 2, like what would I like to see out of it? I mean, honestly, I would kind of like to see a reintroduction of the pressure sensitive face buttons, but I doubt that will happen. And then I mean, I'm trying to like rack my brain over like what features they could add to like add immersion to it, because that's generally what I think these features try to do, like DualSense, Rumble, then haptics. Those are all immersion. And I don't know if there's some similar haptic or like crunchiness almost you could add to the face buttons that make it more immersive. But the problem I see there is that like if X, like, I don't know, introduces some haptic features, like so when you're jumping in sand, it feels like softer versus like jumping on cobblestone. My worry with that would be you're adding like a failure point to the controller. And I would be really worried that like, yeah, the DualSense 2 is great for the first 3 months that you use it, but the haptic thing always breaks the face buttons on the controller.
Yeah. That's I really think it should just be evolutionary, like, and there will be mini games, you know, to answer Tolkien's questions. There'll be mini games that ignore them, but like one thing, I was playing Battlefield 6 and my character's heart was beating. This works actually both on PC and PlayStation. That's really cool that they fully use the DualSense. But when your character gets knocked out and you're waiting to get revived, the heartbeat really feels like you're holding someone's chest if you're holding a DualSense controller. I got my girlfriend's hand and put it on and she's like, geez. And it's like, I think more of that and more ways to like do it usefully, not just sound cool, but like, what if you could have like things vibrate in directions to indicate incoming things? That's all that really comes to mind. Everything else, just give it a longer battery life, make it more durable. I would not do anything that also makes it hard to keep compatibility going in the future because of some issue with how the digital buttons that they got rid of, and that broke compatibility with a lot of games that still aren't supported on PS4 and 5.
Yeah, and then I guess I don't know, because I don't know what gimmicks you add with this without VR, but like I could see a future where like, especially if they want the PS6 and PS6 mobile version or PS6, whatever they call the handheld version of that, if they want them to be very like interchangeable with one another, I could kind of see them taking a page out of like the Switch's book and having like a controller that like breaks out into joysticks too. But I think that feature would be a lot more interesting if like Sony was still going really hard for VR and they were like trying to add integration, like it use your PSVR 3 and your PS6 and your PS6 handheld all can use the same controller or something. But I don't really know what that would add for immersion, I guess, with the exception of VR, obviously.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let us now move on to the next story, which is funny. You know, I was going to do a live stream last week, but then I looked around as I kind of do a soft, like, oh, what's the news script looking like before weekends, even if it's the weekend.
Because you don't want to have recording 2 podcasts, basically.
Yeah, well, I want to organize it ahead of time, and I'm like, how are things going? And I was like, nothing is happening. And I went, you know, I've had a PlayStation leak that I've finished a week ago that I just haven't put out, and there's no news this week. So let's make news. And that's what I did when I put out the video that we're going to talk about for story number 2. PS6 Foundation details leaked. Now moving on to the future of PlayStation, which seems brighter than the present, we have compiled several SDK changes in a recent videos that Sony has made behind the scenes with developers, all of which point directly at PS6, especially the handheld, showing Sony is, first of all, still on track for roughly a 7-year generation, launching almost certainly late 2027 or in the first half of 2028, maybe late 28, despite panicked rumors suggesting 2029. Seeing all these things going on in the background for the next gen suggests that this thing is coming sooner rather than later. But additionally, we have an update on Power Saver mode. Now, for those who don't know, Power Saver mode is this thing that Sony has pitched as like a thing to like get lower performance, whether it's frame rates or image quality, and in return have your PS5 use some less energy, although not as much less as you would think. Well, I have received documents that describe how it works and also that have new requirements to implement it. And what I've learned, and I have diagrams that we can put on screen showing this, but the mode disables 5 threads, moves all game logic to 1 CCX, so 4 cores, while the system retains 2 leftover cores for using the background tasks, almost as if the console is trying to simulate some future console that will have 4 gaming cores and 2 system cores.
What could that be?
Which, of course, is similar to the Canis, the APU that will be used in the next-gen handheld. This cannot be pure coincidence, but it doesn't stop there. In addition to that, Sony has gone back and backported low power mode, or I guess it's called publicly Power Saver mode, to all PlayStation SDKs. SDKs are like the software on a dev kit, like this the edition of PlayStation software that Sony updates every month or so. And the first one was 1.0. PS5 Pro was not ported back to that. It's I think only 9 and later. And now low power mode has been ported to every single SDK. That's important because if a dev wants a new feature, sometimes they have to update their games-based code to the newest SDK, which can break compatibility and requires extra Q&A. So Sony backporting Power Saver mode to the first SDK. They're trying to make it as easy as flipping a switch, and that for game devs to add Power Saver mode support. And that cost Sony a lot of money and effort from their programmers to backport it all the way. In other words, they think easy support for low power mode is more important than having a game easily support PS5 Pro enhanced. Meaning whatever this is more important. They want it
to sell a lot, maybe.
So all of this, keep in mind, people. Number 1, low power mode works by using 4 cores for the game and 2 for background tasks, just like the handheld I've leaked. Number 2, they regard Power Saver mode as more important for support than PS5 Pro. And then there's a third thing that's absolutely hilarious. A new update to this new system I learned about, actually, called the PlayGo system. This is what's used to organize how it was described to me, and it even says in some documents this way, chunks of information. This is like the thing I think that lets you, when you're downloading a game, you can play it before it's done being downloaded, because things are organized into chunks, and now the PlayGo system lets you have different versions of chunks so that if you have a PS5, you don't download all the assets for the PS5 Pro version. You used to have to do that. Okay, there's now different file packages for low power mode or Power Saver mode, just like PS5 Pro. Mm-hmm. That makes absolutely no sense, because if this was just for the PS5, which always has 16 gigs of RAM, there's no situation where you would want different assets really for Power Saver mode. I guess you could have lower polygon counts, but there also allows for different texture sizes. And so add it all up, people. Power Saver mode's more important for support to Sony than PS5 Pro mode. Also, now there's different assets, and also Power Saver mode seems to emulate the specs of the handheld I've leaked. Good Lord, this entirely confirms that there's a PlayStation handheld coming and basically verifies the specs that I've leaked. This is absolutely hilarious. One more thing. There was also a soft sunsetting for PS4, as legacy PSN features are discontinued for new titles. These will have to use a new cross-gen SDK for PS5, which will allow the game to kind of run on the PS5 or future consoles, perhaps. And so, yeah, that's also a thing, is they're like completely tired of supporting the PS4. But yeah, Power Saver mode is just a funny way of saying PS6 Canis compatibility mode. What did you think about all this? This is one of my most technical leaks, but it seems to be performing well. I was a little worried it wouldn't.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of any possible, like any alternative to me. And I think this quote unquote alternative is more like also possibly just consistent with this, is if it were Sony has seen the like writing on the wall, or not seeing the writing on the wall in their analysis, is really seen there is just a massive subset of gamers that really don't care about going like, I don't know, beyond 1080p 60 hertz. So screw it, we're just going to have a mode that's meant to run in 1080p 60 hertz. But like, I still think that would come with like a future where they're releasing, say, a console that's generally meant to be played in 1080p 60 hertz, possibly on the go, possibly like plugged in a port or something, or maybe you get a PS6 handheld and the PS or a Vita TV like alternative that still uses the Canis. Like I think those are all possible realities. But yeah, I mean, low power mode, like nothing makes sense unless there's some piece of low powered hardware, I think, that they're releasing with it, which, yeah, it has to be the handheld or
a budget PS5
or a budget PS5. Yeah. Which I don't see a budget PS5 this late in the generation. Like maybe that would have been interesting if they would have tried to introduce that. Like we have a PS5 coming out in like 2023. Like, we're really trying to get people off the PS4. Here's a 1080p 60 hertz PS5 that comes out, something like that. But this late into the generation, I think it has to be something that they pair with the PS6.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of what else there is to say. Like on the note of the, what if it was just for the low power mode and it actually is just a coincidence, or it was for some PS5 console that's coming that's a budget one. It needs to be stated that limiting the game to only use 4 cores for the game, but then still use a couple cores on the other CCX for background tasks, kind of defeats the purpose of the argument. Like if you were arguing that it only uses one CCX and that cuts power, we don't even have to enable part of the silicon. It still uses the other CCX for the background task. So that's not true.
Yeah.
On top of that, the best way actually to save power would be, I don't remember, I think the PS5 runs at 3.4 gigahertz or something for the CPU. The best way to save energy would be to just cap it at like 2 gigahertz, but let it use all of the cores. Maybe even make one of the system cores be useful by the game and just make multitasking more sluggish, because the more cores you use for a task, actually within reason, the more efficient it runs. Because, for example, the 16 core Strix Halo, if you push it super hard, it might produce more heat than the 12 core version. But in testing, we've seen that the 16 core overall just uses less energy than the 12 core. And that's because it has more cores to jump threads between to not produce as much heat in one area. And that's a very interesting thing, that or you can run more cores running at lower clocks because some of the cores aren't stressed as hard. An analogy I made is it'd be like if you said, I'm going to be more efficient and human energy by lifting the fridge by myself instead of calling my 3 friends to help me lift the fridge. It's like, even though one person lifted up that fridge, I don't think any less energy was used because that one person was struggling so much more than if 4 people were to lift the fridge. That's what it's like to use more threads. So really low power mode or power saver mode isn't programmed to save energy. It actually, I mean, it will kind of, but it's really not the way you would go about it if it was specifically for the PS5 to save energy. You'd want more cores to be used, not less, just at lower clocks.
Yeah. So, and you're saying, yeah, like you said in the write up too, like, so this seems more akin to a simulation of some piece of future hardware than what you would necessarily do to make the PS5 run as efficiently as possible.
And so I'm trying to think if there's much else to say about this. I mean, also the Plago system is basically becoming PlayStation Smart Delivery. So now it will sense if you have PS4, PS5, PS6 handheld, or PS6S. Hopefully they'll use the handheld APU to make a budget console as well. PS6 standard console, we'll call it. I don't know. And then there will also be, of course, PS5 Pro. Like all of these now, it should organize chunks pretty soon. And this is just 2 weeks ago they added this stuff. So like I assume in the coming months, it will be this thing where like it knows exactly what to install on what. And this should reduce install sizes for some devices as well. By the way, another important thing for the handheld, I don't know how much storage it will have, but I imagine 1 terabyte at most with no possibly no way to have physical games. So it'll be more important that like the handheld version doesn't download all these textures it doesn't need. And maybe it takes up less space on your handheld as well. So this should benefit everyone. They're finally getting this thing that catches up, or I was actually told is slightly better than how Xbox Smart Delivery works. A little late for them to finally do that, I would say. But, you know, what I'm also saying is pretty soon they might remove the thing where if you want to install The Last of Us Part 2 or The Last of Us Remastered or something, it's like, do you want to install the PS4 version and the PS5? Or like, I don't know if you remember some games still, like if you put a disc in from the PS, I guess there's multiple reasons why, but like it will just know which one to install and have bespoke install options for tons of different PlayStations. So that's nice to see as well.
Yeah.
This piece of content is brought to you by Wondershare Recoverit V14. Even if you back up your files regularly, like I do, to an external drive, your data isn't always necessarily 100% safe. Backup does not automatically mean recovery. Yes, it feels secure to duplicate your files, but something can still go wrong. And that's what most people don't realize, that external backups fail quite often from a whole host of events outside of your main device that you probably aren't putting somewhere else where things can go wrong. They can be dropped, broken mounting connections, depending on how things are stored or connected. File systems can get corrupted, or even just specific files, not the drive itself, becomes unreadable, but that still sucks if that was the file you actually wanted to access. And this is where data recovery tools come in. You see, tools like Wondershare Recoverit V14 are not just there to replace backups, but to handle situations where the backup itself didn't cover what went wrong. Recoverit V14 offers AI smart file recommendations. AI highlights lost photos and videos first, so you don't need to search manually and remember what might be wrong. AI bad sector detection and risk alert also detects drive issues before recovery, avoiding blind attempts, and it supports multiple data loss scenarios and devices. It is simple to use and beginner friendly for a recovery process app. And so, no, it can't magically fix everything, but it can fix far more dead files than you'd think. And without a recovery option, there wouldn't be any chance of recovering something in the event something you didn't plan for goes wrong. And eventually, something you didn't plan for does always happen to all of us. So backup is important, but recovery is what you hope you never need, but you should always be prepared to use and have ready. And so if you want to make sure you are thoroughly protected, check out the link below to get a free trial of Wondershare Recoverit V14. Checking out the trial yourself costs you nothing, but it does help the channel a ton when you download and try out that free trial. So please do so to support Moore's Law is Dead by starting your free trial of Wondershare Recoverit V14 today. Mark Smith writes in and says, new games fuel the industry, but how much does backwards compatibility credibility drive sales of new hardware and software in a competitive multi-platform landscape? Thank you, Tom and Matt. So this was submitted for the Alderon Games episode. We're finally getting around to it. I mean, I think I can answer this. I don't think it made a huge difference with PS4 because the PS4 was cheap and launched with a new Killzone and had a new Bloodborne come and had Bloodborne, not new, just the only Bloodborne to this day for some reason. Coming, and Horizon, you know, like it's like, well, I'm going to get the PS4 because I want to play Horizon. I want to play Bloodborne. I want to play all these games that aren't on PS3, and the PS3 is a reasonable price. So in that way, I don't think backwards compatibility matters that much. But moving forward, we've seen that like one of the main reasons you would get a PS5 is that with GTA 5, you can just play the better version and turn on ray tracing at 60 frames actually. And so I think backwards compatibility and the knowledge that if you get a PS6 S, you know, it'll play your PS4 games if you skipped PS5. I think actually that's going to be a huge deal next gen.
Yeah, and I do think that like console generations moving forward, it does seem like backwards compatibility is something they have in mind with, you know, the consistency of, I mean, these consoles all being developed using AMD hardware. All of them are x86 now. Like, I think that's just going to become a more and more essential feature where, especially if like the cadence of first party releases is a bit slower than it used to be, I think backwards compatibility could become more and more prominent of a feature,
like
rather
more
than
and more like you're insane if you don't have it.
Yeah. Whereas like the PS4, I mean, I think people kind of
And
just
PS3 broke it too with PS2.
kind of just forgave it because like so many new games were coming out at any given time. But I don't know if this heuristic is going, not heuristic. I don't know if this like general wisdom is going to change where like, I feel like when the PS4 came out, it's like, I don't think it was seen as an essential feature, but it's like a negative, gets you some negative press coverage for not having backwards compatibility. I could see backwards compatibility being viewed as a more and more important feature as time goes on.
Falto writes in again and says, "Hey, Tom and Dan, how true is this statement of OpenAI walking back their promise to buy RAM? And does this mean RAM shortages could be ending or at least getting better sometime soon?" So this was, I believe, the tweet from Hardware Canucks showing memory maker stock prices going down after it came out that these letter of intents, that were covered in my OpenAI buys up the world's RAM basically leak, that they aren't following through with the intents. It seems it's too early to be sure, but that's the rumor that's coming out. And it makes you wonder too if a bigger part of this issue with OpenAI isn't so much that they bought up all the RAM, but everyone believed they bought up all the RAM, and so everyone else bought up all the RAM in response. But well, we're going to answer all of this now with story number 3. So DRAM and AI markets begin their collapse, maybe? Quoting first from TrendForce, and then we have a rather lengthy write-up summarizing what's going on with all these rumors with RAM and AI bubble stuff collapsing. So TrendForce says, on balance, the current DDR5 price correction appears to be a consumer-driven short-term adjustment rather than a definitive signal of structural demand deterioration. And this is, by the way, just so everyone knows for more context, like RAM prices have been dropping in some regions right now. I think substantially in China. Contract prices have so far held firm, though, and server-side HBM and DRAM demand has remained largely intact, with major suppliers reportedly locked into multi-year agreements with key clients. For now, the industry's long-term fundamentals appear largely unchanged, but whether the recent turbulence proves to be a healthy cooldown or an early warning sign might only become clear in the months ahead. And so, yes, in the past weeks, we have seen several events show that the AI bubble could be slowing. Unsurprisingly, OpenAI has been at the center of two of the biggest. They shit-canned their hugely unprofitable video AI Sora, losing possible Disney investments due to that along with it. And they couldn't handle expanding one of the Oracle-owned Project Stargate sites to its full 2 gigawatt form, though Microsoft decided to take over the 700 megawatt expansion. And unsurprisingly, their stock is low, with private investors reportedly betting on Anthropic now. So this is something I also saw covered on Prop G Markets recently, that there's rumors that people are starting to have trouble selling OpenAI stock on the private market right now behind the scenes, suggesting a lot of people might not want it anymore. But anyways, is TrendForce right? Well, the recent price drop, is the recent price drop just a quirk of the consumer market? The answer is maybe. At the end of the day, OpenAI is probably the worst run AI startup. They missed their hype window. They are now running out of capital following an ill-received deal made with the Trump administration. But for now, ultimately, data centers will still expand, just for Microsoft and others. And the people not buying OpenAI shares aren't running away. They're simply chasing Anthropic instead. So the overall landscape, therefore, arguably remains the same for now. In fact, OpenAI's signs of slowing down might allow AI to survive even when OpenAI itself goes down. However, do remember this as well. When Enron collapsed, this was a big, supposedly green and just in general energy company that turned out to not be rolling out the energy expansions they said they were, kind of became a Ponzi scheme, and that collapsed. It pulled down the entire energy market with it, even though Enron was not the entire energy market. And as such, it's overall hard to say if what we are seeing right now is truly a beginning of the end for sky-high RAM prices and AI valuations, or if it's just the beginning of a release valve, maybe the one that I was told by my sources would probably appear by mid or late 2026. Either way, though, one thing remains clear, and I did check this before we started recording, so this is as of Monday evening, everybody, in the U.S. Nvidia and Oracle, especially, for example, are not booming on the stock market. They are down for the year. Especially in the case of Oracle. And so at a minimum, investors have to be spooked, as NVIDIA's earnings have been insanely positive with insane forecasts, and yet their stock price keeps going down. I don't know. It seems like people are spooked, and at the same time, consumers aren't willing to pay sky-high RAM prices endlessly. So I feel something could be going on here. But if it's just a temporary slight reduction or the start of a massive one, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you could see an adjustment and maybe more stability in RAM prices. If part of this is just consumers deciding to hold firm, like we're not going to buy RAM here. Okay, that'll drive prices down a bit, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if you just see like a slight reduction in RAM prices, and then maybe there's a little bit less volatility in the market, if that makes sense. But I do think we're seeing signs that this AI bubble could be exploding. Like you see stock prices for these companies going down. I think you see increased skepticism about AI in general. But I mean, these are long deals. I think there's still a huge demand, corporate demand for AI. And even if OpenAI ends up blowing up, I mean, they still chum the water, and now every tech company and their mother is trying to do what OpenAI is doing. I mean, what you have Oracle, Microsoft, Google, who else are the big players? Like, I mean, they're all developing Anthropic. They're all developing their own competitors to OpenAI. Meta, yeah. Even if OpenAI is starting to show signs of failing, I mean, maybe that will drive down the market, but you still have all of these companies buying up a ton of RAM. And I think the demand, if OpenAI ends up going down a ton, or OpenAI ends up just exploding, I mean, the demand for AI, at least for, I think the next like medium term, is still probably going to be there, unless something like you say, like Enron happen, like you invoked, like Enron happens and the entire market just blows up overnight. But
because remember, and again, I'll have to plug this podcast again. I'll have George show the thumbnail. I think it is one of the best broken silicons that we've done. So I really recommend people check it out. What was it? It was episode 333. Like, people, Ed brings this up. Like, he agreed with me. Absolutely. Ed Elson, that is, from Prophecy Markets. Yeah. He agreed. Like, we are well beyond like your normal profit or multiple of earnings like you would see with like Palantir or something. Like, some of these companies are like 300 times earnings. This is absolutely silly. So what does that mean? Is there something fundamental that means it's worth that much more? No, it's a narrative. The narrative, the story these people are telling people is what's making the prices keep going up. And a large part of that was Chat GPT. They were the pets.com. Mm-hmm. They were Enron. And so if they go, what we don't know is how many mom and pop investors are just throwing their money into the big tech stocks right now. How many private investors are only in AI because Chat GPT, like you said, chum the waters. Then they go away. And then I think it would take just more than that, because Nvidia is kind of now the AI company. But I can paint a picture. I mean, we're seeing Iran bomb data centers in the Middle East, like, and we're seeing supply chain shocks. What if TSMC announced we're going to have to halt production for a month, and then Nvidia announced that means no more GPUs, and then Anthropic announces we can't build out our data centers, and then ChatGPT goes bankrupt. So you have a bankrupt poster child for the AI market. Well, basically, every AI company is told their plans to expand aren't going to happen even remotely as fast, as like half as fast, a quarter as fast as they said they were. And then everyone just goes, fuck it, we're out. I'm when I see consumers not buying Nvidia stock when Nvidia makes the most impressive announcements I've ever heard, just objectively at their earnings, forward looking, like it really was impressive what they had going on, you know, with how much money they were making and how much money they expect to make, especially in the coming year. Like, when you see no one react to that, that tells you people are looking for pessimism. And if you get real pessimism, I don't know, like seeing it, OpenAI, it's, I don't know.
Yeah. And then just to add to that, like, or expand on that, I think like there is also the fact that the stock market is kind of stupid sometimes, where like one thing goes belly up or has a massive downturn, and then that drives a downturn in the entire sector because people like, I don't know, see Nvidia go down and they're like, well, that means AMD must be going down too, for example. And it's not necessarily, it's not necessarily the case. And I think that's, I think the stock market in a lot of ways is driven by like a broad view of like a specific market rather than like looking at individually analyzing each stock. So like, GPUs are bad right now. We better pull out all of our investments from GPUs, even if it's just one company that released a shitty generation or something.
Yes, that type of stuff happens all the time. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. AI Renewable Chief writes in. It says, OpenAI killing off Sora. Is this just a mild stomach bug, or will they shit the bed? Well, you can do that from a stomach bug. But because I just want to be able to buy RAM again. I think we're just at a minimum seemingly getting out of this stupid money phase. Like the phase of like you say AI, just like if you add blockchain to your company's name or .com to your company's name 20 years or 25 years ago, like we're out of that phase where that really works.
Well, yeah, I'm glad to see something like Sora going away because like frankly, what Sora is useful for is putting videos on TikTok that put words in people's mouths and idiots fall for. That's like what Sora feels like it's useful for to me. Or I don't know, putting some dumb bullshit on Twitter. Like that's Sora's use case. I don't really see how this thing makes money, except for I guess for that giant $1 billion deal they supposedly were trying to pen with Disney. But yeah, I don't think this is a useful feature. If that means OpenAI completely goes down with the shit because of Sora, or if that means, like you said, just some of the dumb money is getting out of AI, I honestly welcome both. So
AI Ikes writes in and says, does Google's new AI compression system TurboQuant have any chance at reducing memory demand across the industry and lowering prices? From what I have heard and read, no. This was again a thing where people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about saw some paper and said, this means memory is useless now. And it was basically the equivalent of people saying quantum's going to kill Bitcoin 10 years ago. And here we are. Nothing's happened. It means absolutely nothing for the market is actually what I heard described on a couple of podcasts I listened to. And what I will say is, again, so but if ChatGPT goes down, what will, consumers think? And it's like, well, I don't know. Consumers here don't know what things are. So if ChatGPT goes out of business, everyone might just sell their tech stocks.
Yeah. And I don't know, like just seeing something like this, like let's assume like, what is it? They said it 8x reduction in memory use or whatever. I don't know. Like if farmers suddenly figured out how to grow crops 8x denser, would every farmer just get an 8 times smaller plot of land? I doubt
Probably
it.
Not. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. AI Mobile Chief writes in again, says tinfoil hat time. Nvidia isn't stingy with GPU memory. They were closely collaborating with Google behind the scenes. A new TurboQuant would slap. People stopped playing crappy AAA titles a long time ago. No, Resident Evil 9 is the best-selling Resident Evil in history. You are just jaded. There are still plenty of great AAA games. So 8 gigabytes is more than enough to run advanced AI? No. And people want more RAM too. Like, let's say it's 8x. So like what, 8 times 8, 64 or like 60. People want 200 gigabyte graphics cards. So an 8x reduction isn't enough to make 8 excellent at it. But coincidentally, this is also why they figured the DDR5 situation would resolve itself in time for the 2026 holiday season. Did we dare doubt Jensen's ability to play 4D or perhaps 5D chess and get his way out of this quagmire? So obviously this is a sarcastic question, but no. Carbon Cry writes, Google is the one AI player who works completely separately actually from NVIDIA. There's no way. They do their own thing. They even sell products that compete with NVIDIA, by the way. Did they just announce an AI GPU or something? It was, as for TurboQuant, demos always show much higher ratio of improvement than real developments. Yeah. And again, from what I've heard on some podcasts with experts, it's going to do absolutely nothing. So to answer all of this, no.
Sarcasm.
Yeah. Hopefully, because no, if you're serious. AI generated fish writes in, is it just me or have we seen a flood of people claiming that they need VRAM to train AI models? Is this the new everyone is a creative and needs multi-core performance? I'll never understand trying to justify a use case that doesn't exist. So I don't know what you're specifically talking about, generated fish, but no, I don't think so. I know, and again, this is anecdotal, and I'm probably connected to far more people who would care about this, but I know people that are messing with AI models on their own, and they're building their own little AI things, so they don't need to rely on Gemini or ChatGPT or Anthropic and like outsource it to the cloud. There's security concerns with that. So no, I do think there is a decent amount of people messing with AI models privately. And I think you're seeing a vocal minority saying they need it in the comments. It's like, well, yeah, most gamers don't watch Broken Silicon. All gamers who mess with AI probably watch Broken Silicon or have heard of it, because this is the exact niche type of podcast they would listen to. So when you see a lot of those comments, it's because that's the type of people that would watch Broken Silicon.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see an increase in people wanting to run local AI models, but I would, I guess, generally agree. Like, there is a weird thing I feel like happens with the internet when some new feature is often discussed, like people kind of start discussing it as if this is a thing all gamers need, and it gets a little stupid sometimes. But
this spring, Jessie, like many Belgian Malinois, is starting her own logging company outside. And I gotta say, watching her do this, it's bizarre. It's almost as weird as someone paying full price for Microsoft Office or operating systems, and that is why this piece of content is brought to you by CDkeyoffer.com. That's right. Once again, the longest running sponsor actually of Moore's Law is Dead, CDkeyoffer.com, is sponsoring this piece of content, and that's because I just think it's something that should be out there, something that our community should always know about, and that is reasonably priced Microsoft keys and also deals on different pieces of software like games as well on their website. Now, if you're interested in supporting Moore's Law is Dead and thus supporting a sponsor that supports Moore's Law is Dead, go to CDkeyoffer.com through the link below. Just clicking on that link helps a ton. But then if you do go there and want to buy something, make sure you use offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software and Die Shrink to save 3% off everything else on the website. Again, they've been a great sponsor this whole time. I love working with them. It's easy to work with them, and they provide a service I think this community needs: reasonably priced Microsoft keys. So support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out CDkeyoffer.com today. He writes in again, AI-generated fish, and says, how much insight do you have into the steps in the RAM supply chain? How many steps there are in the RAM supply chain? Like, if OpenAI somehow becomes insolvent in 2026 and the bubble pops, what would the timeline look like shifting HBM into DDR or LPDDR for consumer use? I'm not going to get into like exactly how long. I mean, I've said on multiple pieces of content, if the bubble popped today, it would be like 3 to 6 months before things start to get significantly better. So what I'll just say is what I've been saying. I'm told that things should get a little better late this year. Mm-hmm. And I continue to believe that late 2027 or early 2028 is when things will start to significantly get better as capacity opens up for 3 nanometer, when the biggest AI stuff is moving to 2 and 14A, frankly. And that's perfectly timed for the PS6's launch. So I think Sony is going to try to time exactly when they launch the PlayStation with when and Xbox
prices are down.
Yeah. And I recently discussed this in depth in Broken Die Shrink 172. Check it out. I had a guest, Malak Ware, where we talk in detail about like timing of the markets for part of it. And we seem to be of the opinion that, especially based on the people we talked to in the industry, that late 27 actually is when there might be a dearth of demand, and that's perfectly timed for a new console. And remember, these companies like Sony, I mean, look at how they were able to cut prices briefly during the RAM shortage against Microsoft. Like, they're very good at timing when to buy things for their hardware. So if Sony's planning, I'm told they still are planning to build out in mid 2027 and sell their stuff 2028 or late 2027. I think that's an indicator that the people whose job it is to do this and who seem to be the best at planning ahead for manufacturing all seem to agree late 2027 is when things are going to be significantly better or start to be. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say. Carver Cry writes in, He says, how has Google seemingly escaped the PR disaster of AI? As OpenAI becomes openly hated, Anthropic increasingly mocked just as it becomes increasingly known, and Meta, well, they've always been a bit of a joke. Let's go to the metaverse. Yeah, they're a joke. Google seems to see no change in public perception. Is it just because they are adults in the room full of brash, loud, kind of zany kids like OpenAI and Anthropic? Is it that they are quietly executing and delivering actually useful stuff like, Gemini and Gmail and Notebook LLM? Could it be because Google relies on in-house hardware co-developed with Broadcom, and so it doesn't talk about how many thousands of GPUs of compute they're planning to buy from and deprive gamers of? I don't know, Dan, if you have any opinions. I will say they seem to not talk out of their ass as much.
So I think to some extent, I almost I think I disagree with the question a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Google's had a massive hit to their perception over the past few years. Like,
I think the perception was just 2 years ago because their early stuff sucked.
Like Gemini has gotten better. I think people generally view Gemini as better than it was when it first launched. Like,
oh, it's not even close.
But I mean, I don't know. Public perception wise, there's constant discussion of how Google search is shit now. People trying to look for alternatives to Google search, or constantly talking about alternatives to Google search. Like, constant discussion online of like how you need to go to page 4 to find anything fucking useful on Google anymore. And like that half of that is AI because they have a increasingly large Google Gemini thing that comes up when you search, even if the information is generated is better than like, I don't know, Grok, which I don't know, might do some interesting interpretations of World War II, let's say, instead. Like, yeah, Google Gemini, I think, is a lot better than a lot of these AI models that exist. But I think Google's had a pretty huge hit to its perception over the past couple of years. Maybe that's not entirely AI, but like I think Google, like, people like it a lot less than they used to, and maybe they're still more favorable than like OpenAI. But I don't think Google AI is seen as like completely immune to this negative AI public perception. I really don't see that.
Yeah, what I would say is Google used to be viewed incredibly well. I mean, what? You had that movie with Vince Vaughn, sponsored by Google, like 5 or 10 years ago.
The Intern or something like that? Or,
yeah, when it was like basically a giant ad for Google. But at the time, Google was kind of pretty nice. I mean, they like literally their motto was like, don't do evil, and then they removed that. So relative to when they were viewed like entirely positively a decade or two ago, I agree that it's worse then. I will say though, Dan, their stock has surged actually late last year. I think it's down now because all AI is down. But I think it's just relatively speaking, when they had the Black George Washington and Asian World War II German soldier pictures come out, I just think they faced their backlash early, and that's when everyone hated on them. And then they just put down their head and worked, and now people regard them better. And by the way, I do not think that Google is bad now. I think it actually works significantly better. You need to try it again then, Dan. It actually works significantly better. I can ask abstract questions, and it answers it instantly in a way that it did not 2 years ago. And so, no, I think Gemini has just took a hit early, and now they don't take a hit because they're not going around saying we should replace people. And I don't know if humanity is worth saving, like Altman and Thiel and all of these other nut jobs are saying. They're just putting down their head and doing the work, and they haven't had any scandals recently. I will say it's all relative. Everyone was hating on Gemini 2 years ago, and now they're not.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like there is an exposure issue with AI where there's like an inverse quality to perception of the AI itself. Like the more you talk about your AI, the more people perceive it negatively because people
which
just
was the opposite
AI.
A year ago.
But
it's starting to become backlash mode where maybe just shut up and do the work and stop talking about it.
Yeah, because especially at this point with AI, it really does need to be, okay, show me the money. You guys have been talking about how great your AI is now for years. I'm frankly tired of seeing AI companies constantly talk about how great their AI is, but still completely fail like the broad use cases that they seem to constantly advertise that they have, rather than, I don't know, the limited but definitely there number of use cases that AI has. Or like actually show off the product that you can make with it or what it allows you to do. And I don't know, don't go out and do weird dystopian keynote speeches where you talk about replacing doctors.
Sam,
Jensen,
shut the up. Like, you really do need to stop talking. It's no one wants to hear anymore. They want to see. I think Google figured that out when they again put out Asian Nazi pictures with Gemini, and that was ridiculous. So maybe they just learned the lesson early, and they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be talking so much. And I think there's a lot of people, Jensen Huang to a degree as well, that are still in this 2024 mode of the more you say AI, the more money you make. And it's actually starting to become the opposite. And I don't know, maybe Google learned that early, but Google has faced backlashes too. So I don't know that I would say they're like, it's just right now the cool thing is ChatGPT, right?
Maybe right now Google is in a far better place than like especially OpenAI, where there's a huge backlash against OpenAI right now. Like I think the strongest backlash is probably against OpenAI right now. Like, but I don't know. And then the other company that constantly advertises how great their AI is, or is just really public facing with it, is Twitter, and
it's terrible.
Yeah, and it's terrible.
It's just awful. All right, let us move on now to story number 4. Capcom promises Gen AI assets won't be part of its games anytime soon. Quoting from Eurogamer, "We will not implement assets generated by AI into our games," Capcom stated, adding that it won't be shying away from proactively using other AI tools as a, in quotes, contributing technology to improve the efficiency and productivity of the game development process. To put it simply, Capcom will use generative AI to help streamline time-consuming and repetitive game development tasks and form the foundation for a lot of work that eats into development time that they wish their developers weren't wasting time doing. Yet another game studio, therefore, has decided to test the waters of people's hatred of all things AI, and yet again, they promise to use AI for just ideation, speeding up concept work, while vowing not to ship any AI art in the games themselves. This is a very common position now, and it seems the responses to such announcements have become more reasonable as well, especially compared to the ridiculous harassment faced by BG3's Larian and Claire Obscure's Sandfall, Baldur's Gate 3. Is AI a bubble? Well, yes, and it has many negative impacts, but it isn't going anywhere. And consumers at least have now demonstrated with their DLSS 5 backlash that AI can be diverted away from the uses consumers do not want and only be used for the things we want them to use it for. And so I think this is an important kind of like, we don't need to spend too much time on it, but I did include this as a main story because a common argument I saw responding to my, let's say, very critical reactions to DLSS 5, a lot of the responses were, it's not going away. Todd Howard's Jesus and he likes it. Even RE9 used it. F you, RE9's not going to use it. So we're seeing many games backtrack on this. And if the only studio that uses it is the studio that everyone mods because their games look like shit anyways, other words, Bethesda, that would not surprise me and you, Dan, in the least, I imagine. But I just want to put this out there. No, Capcom is not happy with what's happened. Most studios are backtracking on DLSS 5. I saw there's a weird lawsuit going on with some Italian news site and the DLSS 5 announcement video. I'm not going to get into it. It kind of seems like the Italians are actually the ones, this news site is being the ones being the assholes. Like making a claim that they used a thing that they used. It's very weird. But I don't know. No, it is not inevitable. Obviously, these companies will change if consumers force them to change. I just want to make that clear today.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think like with the whole DLSS 5 debacle, Capcom, especially how forward-facing Requiem was, or I should say Resident Evil Requiem was
in the marketing,
in particular, like I think it kind of just forces Capcom to respond to it, even if like this is just entirely nothing they did, and. I'm not sure what it exactly means that they're not promising to not use AI in any step in their pipeline. If that's almost just like a, hedging thing because, like, I mean, how big of a company is Capcom? I'm sure there are devs that use AI somewhere in their pipeline, even if like they don't explicitly recommend for or against using it. Like I'm sure the AI is being used at Capcom to some degree. Like it's just kind of unavoidable in this day and age, and like this just seems like a kind of equivocating thing where it's like we're not going to say if we will or won't use it.
Mm-hmm. And they're making it clear. Don't expect,
but it won't be
assets.
But it won't be in the game itself if we are using.
We'll use it to help make the game, but no, we're not going to use it to make the assets or run the game or something.
Yeah.
Mark Coleman writes in and says, does the forced integration of AI and other cruft, a word I did not know until today, I had to look up, in Windows 11 mean that there has or will be significant swings to alternative OSs like Linux or Mac? Likewise, will the hate for DLSS 5 mean people will be more inclined to switch to AMD or even Intel? Well, I mean, Intel can't even boot Crimson Desert, so no. As these technology systems actually harm hardware innovation. In other words, do you think bad features no one asked for will reduce the power of vendor lock-in? Yes. Yeah, if that's how you want to phrase the question at the end there, yes. I can't promise you everyone goes to Linux, but yes, it will.
I mean, yeah, like it. I think Linux still needs to become a more viable alternative to Windows especially for gaming. But there is also an entire market that isn't just the gaming market that some people might be like more inclined to get a Mac or something to in the future. And then as far as DLSS 5 goes, I mean, if Nvidia goes really hard down their hardware becoming more and more dedicated to just running things that like DLSS 5 will be great at running at, even if it's not as good at like rasterization as it used to be. I could see like future generations people being driven away from Nvidia for that, but I don't think it will this gen because I don't think DLSS.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on that yet.
I don't think DLSS 5 is going to become an essential feature this generation. I'm more worried about DLSS like 6. What did they do with neural rendering there?
Mm-hmm. Root Knight writes in, I was thinking of possible uses for generative AI in games and thought of something that could actually make sense if the performance cost is reasonable. Randomly generated NPCs. Take a game that has a lot of crowd, and you could have a feature where the game has preset folders for NPC templates, and the AI scrambles those features to make so every time you load the game, the generic NPCs are always a bit different. So, two things. Number one, yeah, we talked about this. I think we've had multiple submissions of reader mails, and it's like, I think this will be a thing some games will do, especially if it's like someone you fight as a mindless goon. Like if you're playing Mountain Blade Warband, or like Mountain Blade 3, I guess I'll say, it would be good for AI to have slightly different knight armor and within reason so that all the soldiers don't look exactly the same, but they look mostly the same so you can still tell what type of unit it is. That makes sense to me. I mean, you could do stuff like that, or like zombies for sure. You know, random, always PMC, always mercenaries in Call of Duty are fighting. We're never going to actually have the balls to say we're fighting another government. It's always a mercenary hired by the Russians. But yeah, they're goons you shoot and you never see their face. You can make them look slightly different. Having said that, I haven't said this before, but it does occur to me. There's tons of videos out there where people are like, wow, we're going all the way back to Elder Scrolls Oblivion or like GTA 5, that there are some people that if you follow around clearly live in a specific house and go to work in a specific building. And so to have them look different every time you play, that doesn't work as often as you'd think, because actually there's more specificity. Yes, thank you. And like random NPCs than you'd think there would be. You just don't notice the amount of detail they've actually put into all of these characters. So they can't do it for everything. But you would agree, a mindless goon, sure, because you shot him, he's gone anyways.
Yeah, and even with NPC interactions, I think there are potentially, and we've talked about this in past podcasts before, like potentially interesting things you could do with AI, like having conversations feel a little bit less on rails or whatever. Like if they could use AI for like conversations you have with NPCs. The one thing I would say, like you said it, that I would be worried with AI in those use cases is if like you don't get the persistence anymore that you get out of some games, because games that don't rely on persistence, like you say, that's not a big deal. But like Oblivion, where the NPCs, like all or a lot of the NPCs, are actual characters in the games rather than just random.
Even if they don't have any quests, they actually do have a thing they do every day.
Yeah, just random nothings that randomly pop into the world. Or like Red Dead Redemption 2, which has a lot of weird mini quest or a lot of like unofficial quests in the game that rely on like persistence of characters continuing to exist throughout the game. I don't think you could like garble that up a lot with AI, because if you do, then that guy that lives in that house might be a different guy every time, when that's essential to these weird quest lines that aren't like.
The one that comes to mind is there's a woman you can meet. I don't remember how or what she says, but she's nice. And then later you can come across another random character camping out in like a field. And if you pay real close attention, you'll notice he has pictures of this woman in his tent in a lot of weird positions and from a long ways away. It's because this guy's been stalking women. You hear him like, I'm going to go meet my future wife today. And I think she disappears if you don't kill him there. And they never answer it. It's not explicitly a quest, but they're making it clear that something went wrong and he's a creep that killed her or something.
Yeah.
And like that type of stuff.
And Red Dead Redemption 2 has a ton of stuff like that. Like,
oh yeah,
there's, I don't remember exactly what it is. I don't think it really relies on NPCs, but there's even one of those quests that like people discovered recently. There's some new Easter egg quest that how old's the game now? 8 years almost, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because it came out in 2018, if I'm remembering correctly. So like 8 years later, people are still discovering shit that Rockstar hid in that game.
And that once they discover, other people can discover, and then they talk about it online, and that makes the game make more money. So you wouldn't want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
All righty. Let us now move on to the final story of today's episode, story number 5. Nvidia DLSS 4.5 dynamic multi-frame gen times 6 multi-frame gen and auto shader compilation have launched. Quoting from Tech Power Up a couple of times before moving on to the write-up. Nvidia has finally launched its long-teased dynamic multi-frame generation and multi-frame generation 6X mode today through a new Nvidia app beta update. This marks the full public release of Nvidia's 4.5 technology suite, which enables the GPU to generate up to 5 additional frames following each additional frame rendered using AI. Additionally, the app now includes a new beta version of NVIDIA Auto Shader Compilation, or ASC. This feature takes DirectX 12 shaders from the game and quickly compiles them while the system is idle or not running any graphically intensive tasks. This feature is often within the NVIDIA app. All right, so for some, the one-to-one fake to real frame was already too much. Not so much for the masters of graphics at NVIDIA, though, who know best how a game should look. For them, the correct ratio is now 1:5. But Will Jensen Wang will definitely use this ratio to calculate just what percent of your pixels are AI generated. That is not the idea. It is to have a floating ratio now to get smooth delivery of very high number of frames per second. Given the quality problems with the good old one-to-one frame gen, that's one fake frame for every real frame, perhaps NVIDIA should focus their work there. First, make the generated frames good enough, and then maybe add more of them. Now, as for actual testing, I looked around today. Fabio at Ancient Gameplays did some testing, and overall, he seemed impressed. He didn't seem to have any noticeable latency issues in Cyberpunk, but did start to notice increasingly bad artifacts once ×5 or ×6 frame gen kicked in. So, in a way, I would argue he seemed to give dynamic as an update, the dynamic side of multi-frame gen an A rating, but then give ×5 or ×6 a C or a D. Meaning there are real downsides when it starts generating up to 5 and 6, and you probably want to cap it at just ×3 or 4. But if you do, it really isn't noticeable, and it does dynamically seem to work pretty well. Meanwhile, I found a review at DSO Gaming that found the update usually impressive. However, it apparently entirely broke with horrible stuttering in Doom, The Dark Ages, Alan Wake 2, and Indiana Jones. And again, it showed more promise than people expected, but it did seem to need tons of work, and X6 mode is questionable. So otherwise, for auto shader compilation, that one is weird. At Moore's Law is Dead, we're still unsure of how exactly it works. Usually a driver needs direct access to the game's shader code to start compiling. So how would NVIDIA's app do this before a given user even turns on a game. And if it only starts happening after the first launch of the game, well, how did it even help? We usually have to do that when we start the game anyways. Then there is the issue that especially on weaker CPUs, users could get ugly performance degradation when the NVIDIA app is open, as that would when it decides to do shader compilation. A lot of CPUs might get bogged down and users might think NVIDIA's app is malware or something. So there are a lot of questions here. Too many to declare this as a positive move just yet, or at least we can't yet declare how positive it will be. So a lot of NVIDIA releases on the software side this past week. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah. So right now, just based on what I saw, 5 and 6X and Dynamic generally seem to be more positively received than like I
expected.
I expected and talked about me being worried about. The image quality latency was a lot better than I was worried about. There's still the issue, and it does confirm like what I thought frame gen was, or dynamic frame gen was, where it does integer, or like it works on integers. So you do 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6x. I'm very curious.
It's not like 3.5 frames.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm very curious to see, like, okay, I have a 240 hertz monitor, and it's going to dynamically scale. If it did that subtly, like, oh, it's generally at 5x, but it's hovering between 4.8 and 5.2. Okay, I'm very curious to see, are there really strange, like, sickness-inducing latency spikes that you get, or I shouldn't even say spikes necessarily, just latency shifts, like when it goes from 5 to 6 or 4 to 5 or whatever, or 5 to 4 even, where you would like where you would expect to see a decrease in latency with that. Is that really jarring for people? Is it not? That's the thing I'm most curious about to see how it works. But, I mean, they all said that the latency generally didn't feel terrible. So I guess early reviews are more positive than I would have guessed or was concerned about.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a 4090. I could test it. Or could I test it actually? Or is it only for Blackwell?
I think it's only for Blackwell.
Yeah, well, that sucks. Yeah, I don't really like it anyways. I will say anytime I've tested frame gen stuff, it never felt worth it to me. And I do think there's just something here where some people seem to not notice the latency shifts as much, whereas me and especially you, it seems, Dan, really notice them and hate them.
Yeah, and then there's just the broader thing of 6x frame generation, where I really question what 6x is even for. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
4 I can even see. Okay. You're playing at, you have a 5060 or something, you bought a 240 hertz monitor, you want to get that 240 hertz. Okay, fine. Who the hell is who is this 6x for? Like, I mean, I guess it's like,
I want my 5050 to run a 360. I don't know. Yeah.
Like it really just doesn't seem like it's a thing for anyone. Like I straight up don't know why you would ever even have it on if you own a 5090, except for the purposes of testing how good or bad 6x frame gen is. That is the only use case I would use it for it with a 5090. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I don't know. I it's hard because it's clear some people like it at least a quarter, or I don't remember what it is. Like
some number.
Most people are on board with DLSS in general now. Overwhelming majority are, I would say. And then you have, a decent amount of people, certainly not negligible, that like multi-frame gen or just frame gen in general, I should say. But I'm just not one of them. And so it's very hard for me to talk about it because I just can't find, like you said, like if you have a weak card, does the game really feel well if like what 80% of your frames or whatever eventually, or maybe not 80%, what is it?
Well,
like 70?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
it would be. Yeah.
About there, yeah. If your frames are fake. I mean, like ancient gameplays showed examples where if you really tried at lower frame gens like 2, 3, or 4, you can see this, but especially at 5 and 6, just moving the scope quickly, like the scope part would just disappear sometimes. So moving around, it's like, who really can put up with that? I don't.
Yeah, and then the thing, this isn't about frame gen at all, but this isn't about criticizing frame gen at all, really, but the difficulty I have sometimes talking about these features is I really wish there were a way to more like faithfully show what frame gen looks like in a YouTube video, and there's just no way to do it. Like, you have to make the decision: are you going to show it in real time, and then that's going to come with its own issues because you can't watch a 360 hertz video on YouTube, or even capture that a lot of the time, or you like slow it down to like highlight the artifacts, but that's not a real thing. So it does make, or that's not like a really real faithful translation of what you would be seeing in games. So it does just make it a little hard to talk about unless you've seen it directly, which, I haven't gotten the opportunity to yet, unfortunately.
Bespoke writes in and says, not sure if this question suits this particular show, so feel free to use it when you feel it's appropriate. That's what we always do, Bespoke. You don't need to tell us that. Dan's love for frame gen got me thinking, if Sony and AMD developed their own version of NVIDIA Reflex that could potentially work well when using frame gen from like 30 or 40 FPS up to 60 plus, could you see this as a potential resource saver on more demanding games running on the PS6 Portable, or am I out to lunch? It's a favorite phrase we all say now. Yeah, I mean, I could see it as being an option to save energy when you go into, handheld mode instead of running native 120 when you're docked. Yeah, maybe it just goes into frame gen to cut power in half. I could see it. I still hope they don't do it. I mean, you saw RE9 run very well on the Switch 2. And how did they do this? They just use DLSS from like a base resolution of like 240 or 360p. It looks pretty good in handheld mode on a smaller screen, right? That is the caveat. But if it is, it does look pretty good. And I just still think there's enough juice you can squeeze by just doing like lower resolution FSR upscaling or something else so the latency isn't complete crap.
Yeah, well, I mean, how much would this potentially save on resources, though, I guess? Because it's not right. I mean, it's not like exactly altering or lessening the resources using. It's just changing the...
Well, there's less, you use less energy in the GPU cores.
Yeah.
But then it does, do you need VRAM? Do you need what? There are trade-offs.
Like, how much dedicated hardware is in this PS6P that's going to be for running that frame gen too? Like, I don't know. There's a huge trade-off, I think. I mean, in a future or a hypothetical where, like we talked about with frame gen, where it's just like topping off the frame rate or whatever, I would like to see that. But I would rather just there be more dedicated hardware to actually rendering frames than
real frames.
Yes, real frames rather than interlacing real frames with hardware that renders fake for AI frames based on those frames.
Well, also, I mean, if you think about like what you can cheat on with a handheld, the cheating comes to the screen being smaller. What does that mean? You don't notice lower resolutions as much. And so the first thing you would do is, again, like what they did with RE9 on the Switch 2. It's very easy. You just, go from a base resolution of what would be 1080p or something that's upscaled on the PS5 Pro or something, but looks like 4K. And you just go, all right, 240p on the Switch 2 handheld mode. And you don't notice, but you will notice your scope disappearing.
Yeah.
And so that's really the wrong time to do that. The right time to do that is if you're running 240 hertz on a big screen, because then you're less likely to notice those artifacts because they're very quick. It's actually handheld's the wrong time, besides saving energy, possibly literally not rendering frames, but it will be more noticeable than lower resolutions.
Yeah, especially because imagine a hypothetical where like the handheld is meant for like on the go 60 hertz. 60 hertz, like everything I've ever seen with frame gen is like 60 hertz kind of feels like shit with frame gen. Like, imagine you're doing 3x frame gen on this handheld.
It could have a 120 hertz display though.
That's true. So if it's, I guess if it's running like 120 hertz and like it's natively rendering the actual frame rate of the game is 40, that might feel okay. But if it's like 60 and running it at what's actually 20 hertz, that would feel awful.
Yeah.
And look terrible because all of the artifacts would be incredibly highlighted. Whereas if you're running like 5x frame gen and they're on screen for 1/360th of a second, you might not notice a lot of those artifacts.
And again, I think all too often people are falling into NVIDIA's logic trap of like, well, we're adding frame gen to save on energy or to boost frame rates that you couldn't get to otherwise, when you can, there is otherwise. You do not need to turn everything up, the ray tracing, like all effects, and then turn on frame gen to make it so your game looks better. You can just turn down DLSS FSR quality slightly and get a higher frame rate. You can turn down a couple settings slightly and get more performance. DLSS, again, I think frame gen is a solution looking for a problem, because we have hundreds of ways to fucking lower the intensity of a game. You can turn down so many different settings. You can turn down so many different upscaling techniques, or turn up, depending on how you think about it. You can do this, and that will give you a higher frame rate, and there will be real frames. You do not need to turn on path tracing, so then you need frame gen. It is I'm sorry, I continue to reject frame gen. It is a solution looking for a fucking problem.
I mean, yeah.
This isn't the PS3 era. We're struggling to run games at 22 frames per second, and we have to like do weird tricks where like Battlefield 3 is running at 704p on the PS3. We are in an era where everything can run 1080p, even APUs, and there are ways to get more performance out of stuff. Where the Switch 2 can run RE9. We are in an era where we're not that bad for performance, and when you have to use frame gen, that means you fucked up something else.
Yeah, I know. Like, to me, it's like, if instead of like putting a better engine in a car or something, they were like, well, we have an engine in your car still, don't worry, but we've also added maglev to your car, and we're gonna like really try to figure out ways to make magnetic levitation make your car go faster. But
it's really heavy.
But it's really heavy and fucking stupid, because now we've had to retrofit all the roads to be maglev when we could have just made a better car engine.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry. Like, now that I've thought about it more, I just continue. I reject this wholly. Jensen Wang says, have you considered that you're wrong about DLSS and AI?
No.
Moving on to and by the way, I'm not an AI hater. I'm a hater of stupid shit. There's a lot of stupid shit with AI, just like blockchain and the Matt Damon ad for crypto.com or whatever the fuck that was. God, I remember laughing out loud when I saw that.
I love Matt Damon, so I buy anything he advertises to me, Tom.
That is, I believe that was like right when the crypto market crashed one time. It's like
it was a bad investment.
Yeah, that called the top right there. It's Matt Damon being in a crypto.com or ad. All right. Let us move on to the wrap up. These are, of course, the stories that we thought were worth mentioning, but didn't require a full conversation. Let me go through this. So Nvidia Rowhammer vulnerability is found in their GDDR6 cards. Don't have much to say about that. Not good. I might have more to say about this. Anti-lag 2 is now FSR latency reduction 2. Why? Anti-lag was a good name.
No.
Why Redstone? FSR 4 was fine.
Rebrand strikes again, Tom. It's just with software now. I mean, Tom, they did say a couple years ago, they had a press release, we're a software company now. That means Rebrand does have to go that way for software at some point too.
9070 XT below MSRP in Europe. I think that's notable for a couple reasons. Number one, I think a lot of people saying graphics card prices are ruined by RAM are NVIDIA fanboys that will only buy NVIDIA and apparently are going to buy a new card every month and don't already have one. Like, guys, Radeon graphics cards, like I reported, were going to continue to be produced. AMD did not screw you over. If you want to reward a company trying to get you products during a shortage, AMD is one of the ones doing it. And they're not overpriced because of that right now, especially not in the EU. Where there's less trade chaos. Well, there was. We'll see if that changes in a month. Speaking of trade chaos, I'll say this one now. Amazon's data centers are being bombed by Iran.
Oh, I wonder why that happened.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's really worth
good
support of
this.
The administration. Is that working out for you, Jeff Bezos? But yeah, I don't know. Again, I think that's I just don't want to dwell on it. I feel like right now we're in a moment like January 2020 with the Iran situation. Everybody listening, this is a general thing, just getting this off my chest here where I have a platform. It's feeling a little bit like January when everyone's like, COVID will blow over, blah, blah, blah. I don't think this is blowing over, guys. Plan for your future accordingly, because I do think this is going to get pretty bad in terms of shortages. Yeah. And I just think people are completely sleeping on this stuff, like how bad it's going to get. Intel Wildcat. On another note,
on a
moving on
brighter-
from worry of
on
World
a
War
far
III.
darker note, Intel Wildcat.
On a far darker than World War III note, Intel Wildcat was spotted. It almost seems like a budget Lunar Lake. I guess it kind of is. It's 2 big cores, 4 low power, extra low power cores or whatever, low power E cores, and then 2 XE. I gotta say, I really wish this had like 6 or 8 execution units so it could like match Lunar Lake or beat it in integrated graphics, but then just have 6 cores. That would have been a much more interesting product to me, but I don't know. It's a budget APU.
I mean, I feel like this is like what for Chromebooks, right? I mean,
yeah. Speaking of Chromebooks, Techno writes him. He says, Bumblebee laptops versus MacBook Neo. How well do you think they'll fare once Bumblebee is out and Apple moves the MacBook Neo from the A18 Pro to the A19? So I think the biggest issue for OEMs right now when it comes to Neo is the fact that it's a Mac at all. Like AMD can launch Bumblebee and maybe it'll be better, although I don't think it will be. I haven't looked at the specs of Neo. Bumblebee is a very budget APU, people, with Zen 6. And same with their ARM Soundwave that I've leaked as well product. Like these are budget products. The problem is nobody thought Macs would be like $500 or $600, and the fact that they are and apparently can run fine with just 8 gigs of RAM on their non-crap operating system compared to Windows. I think that's the problem. The problem is the Mac is that cheap. I don't think you put a Zen 6 APU in a budget laptop and people, at that point they're buying Mac because it's cheap to get an operating system that doesn't blue screen.
Yeah. I mean, simply the fact that they put a Mac out for $500, which it is just budget at that point. And the fact that it works well from everything I've seen is just a massive grenade in like the PC market in general. Like, I don't know how you beat it other than like Windows just getting better, because that's
the albatross around these budget APUs from AMD's neck or Intel Wildcat. That's the albatross. It's not that they can't make a good cheap APU. It's that you need a good APU to make Windows look good.
Yeah, and there was always the argument. I mean, the thing like, at least if you want a budget PC or a budget computer, you can't get a Mac. Well, yeah, now you can.
Exactly. I think this is worth touching on briefly here because I said that my sources told me and my own analysis concluded this as well individually that Panther Lake costs more to make than Strix Halo. So when people are like comparing Panther Lake to Gorgon Point, compare it to Strix Halo and to Gorgon Halo because that's the real competitor in terms of cost and use. And that's true. There is a mini PC out and the Panther Lake model costs more than the Strix Halo edition. And so that just tells Panther Lake is like really expensive, people.
Yeah.
And that you have to be an OEM buying millions of these chips to get a competitive price on them.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, unless it's like Raptor Lake, the price makes the product. And if they can't be competitive with Halo, I still think Halo's the thing you recommend or compete with Halo on price.
Yeah. If Panther Lake costs hundreds of dollars more, well, especially in a mini PC, I think you still Halo. Yeah. In a laptop,
in a laptop, it becomes a harder conversation
because Panther Lake's a lot more efficient. But still, then it's like, well, what do you want? Do you plug it in? How portable does it really need to be?
Generally speaking, even in a laptop, if Panther Lake is more expensive, I think the recommendation would be Halo most of the time. Same price, I think it becomes
if it's slightly more. It's like,
or same price, I think it becomes more of a conversation what you're using it for, though.
Yeah, then you probably go Panther Lake if it's the same price. Probably, depending on how much you really do want to use it to game. But again, it's like probably. B70, it launched. I looked at some reviews and I didn't write it down, but I did some scratch math a few days ago looking over this. And from what I saw, the reason this isn't coming to gaming is it really wouldn't have been competitive like at all. I forgot what the 1-to-1 was, but it was, I believe it was like a 5060 Ti or something, or like a little weaker than a 4070. and a product that they would have had to have charged at least $500. So it's like
Intel's here to save gaming.
Like this is why it's not coming out, guys. It's like I predicted. We won't get into predicted versus speculation versus leaks on this again.
Yeah.
Intel pulls the plug on Xe super sampling support in Unity. What? That seems bad.
No, Unity is not used for anything. Don't worry, Tom.
I just want to take this as an opportunity to say, I think I saw a reader mail the other day, or maybe it was a comment on YouTube that was just like, maybe it was just, I saw a discussion in the Moore's that Discord. But it was like, why is Intel seemingly able to make more features than AMD? And it's like, they're not. Like Xe super sampling took forever to get more than 2 games to support it for the newest version. And now it doesn't even support Unity. They're not. They just try to have all their architectures, if they can, use the newest features. And AMD's being stupid with FSR4 support. It could be on RDNA 3, and I don't know what their And again, the reason they wouldn't port FSR4 to RDNA 3, I want to be clear to everybody, isn't because they don't have the money or resources to do it now. They're worried that in the future it'll become too cumbersome if they're supporting it with basically 2 parallel paths of support. That's why they're doing it. I still think it's stupid. It's not because they can't do it now. And look at Intel. They tried to do a lot of this, and now they don't even support a game engine.
Yeah, they're just being stupid in different directions.
In different ways. They're both their own little unique snowflakes of stupidity. Asha is the one, apparently, according to reports, that ended the This Is an Xbox campaign that apparently she saw as a complete failure from Sarah Bond. I don't have much to say. This was already kind of rumor, but now it seems like it's confirmed that she's the one switching up absolutely everything. You'd hope so, because she's the one in charge now, but I don't know.
I mean, it just highlights, shocker. There was a power struggle at Microsoft. Like, I don't think it would have taken a genius to guess that. That's why Sarah Bond left too. But because clearly Sarah Bond was supposed to replace Phil Spencer a couple years ago, or I said that poorly. Was being groomed a couple years ago to be his successor. Is how I should have put it.
Or like successor without him. Let's see here. Sony and Honda pull the plug on Afeela. I'm a feeling this wasn't a surprise to a lot of people listening, but I just remember seeing this.
Now, did you just put this because you had that Afeela pun locked in, Tom? Or?
No, I did come up with it. That just brilliant piece of comedy that no one could possibly come up with unless they thought of it ahead of time and struggled. But no, it's funny. I'll give you some insight here. I was playing, I think, Battlefield with Brock the other day, and I just saw this pop up on my phone, and I'm like, Brock, did you... I think I said Sony canceled their car. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, did you know Sony was working on making their own EV? And he went, no. I said, would it surprise you to know they canceled it before it launched? And he went, also no. And that's how I feel. It's like when I saw the Sony car, I'm like, all right, I guess we'll see. And then I saw it was basically just a Honda, and I went, okay, that makes more sense. And now it's canceled, and I'm like, yep.
And then I'm looking at the inside of this supposed canceled car, and I'm seeing they've decided the entire dashboard should be a tablet. So I'm kind of glad it was canceled.
See, there's
because that is stupid.
I liked how it looked like on the outside. There's aspects of like the steering wheel and the chairs and like the doors look very nice. But there's at least 1 or 2 screens too many here. It's like, what are we doing?
I actually don't get the point of the steering wheel other than like we want it to look futuristic, so we cut the top half of the steering wheel off. But
to be Dan, come on, it's because I actually
and make turning it will also make turning a little. Oh, unless I know the Cybertruck has like doesn't turn the same way cars do. Like
you can't keep going.
Like I think it's just I don't know exactly.
It's more like twitchy.
It's more twitchy, and I think like it dynamically like changes how far you turn based on like how fast you're going and everything. And so I guess maybe it's a similar thing where like this is all the way turned rather than like you need a couple rotations with a normal car's wheel. But
okay, I guess that would have to be what it is. Yeah. All right. Let me see here. We got a couple more reader mails to round this out. 0x000F4 writes in, So I'm assuming that's some sort of
easy
error
to
code.
pronounce name.
It says how much will the highest S key of Zen 7 Threadripper cost, and when will it come out? I mean, what are they going to launch, a 256 core? Honestly, for Zen 7 Threadripper, remember there's the Steamboat thing I launched.
I love that name.
That's the code name of the Steamboat.
I legitimately do really like Steamboat. I don't know why.
You hope they put a Steamboat on a package.
I think there's something so fun about Steamboat. But go on. Sorry.
But anyways, so there's the 3D core design. I'll have Gerard put some things on screen here for that. And I leaked that long time ago in some Zen 7 leak, I believe. That was the first one to confirm the TSMC 14A node. Now that one, I believe, let me see here. Let me pull it up. Did I write it down here? Yeah, that goes up to 264 cores. It's fully 3D stacked, yada, yada, yada. Very cool, but I don't think they're going to do the full 3D stacked mega core option for Threadripper. My guess is what they will do is use some other IO die and then just use 16 core CCDs to go to like 128 cores that aren't 3D stacked. That would be my guess. So how much will that cost? Still a lot, but I don't think it's going to be like the 50 grand Steamboat version. It'll probably be 15 grand or something. I don't know. Depends how competitive Intel is, of course. Now, when will it launch? My dude, Zen 6 Threadripper hasn't launched, and I don't even expect
2030.
That until,
It
maybe
could be 2030.
It could genuinely be 2030 on the same socket, I guess. I don't even know. I'm not up to date with what we're doing with sockets Threadripper right now, because I think 4 and 5 use the same one, I believe. I hope I'm remembering that right. So I guess those might use the same socket. We'll have to see. But unless they move to DDR6 support for the Zen 7 Threadripper, which I guess they might do that as well. I don't know. We'll have to see. But again, I think Zen 6 Threadripper is probably late next year, so a year and a half away. And so, yeah, I mean, it could genuinely be 2030 that we see this thing. So let's not worry about that right now. Worry about when Zen 6 Threadripper comes out. Karma Cry writes in, why don't gamers hate Valve? Valve has been damaging to games for decades. What started as a positive turned into a parasitic monopoly, sucking the life out of games. Steam takes 30% of a cut. Meanwhile, Epic helps small games by taking nothing off for the first $1 million of revenue and then takes only 12%. It is clear Steam does not need to take as much as they do. How many games did not get made because they couldn't justify the economics due to Valve's extortion? How many studios and teams died because they sacrificed their profit to build games mega? Epic is actually giving back to gamers, saving games and studios. Most public examples being Remedy. Without Epic, Alan Wake 2 didn't happen. Remedy dies. Is Epic morally good? Not really, but let's also be clear that Steam's monopoly has been way more damaging to gamers than any other. Maybe Intel's in the quad-core era. Why don't gamers hate Valve's horrendous monopoly? So I wasn't sure if you were joking with this one, Carmen Cry, because it is worded and certainly in an aggressive way. And I know whenever you do that, it's for sure on purpose. But man, I just think that they're not a parasite. Sony takes the same cut, by the way. Valve does 30%, I believe. And Valve, every developer I talk to puts their stuff on Steam. And the reason they put their stuff on Steam, even if they're an indie dev with this, they don't get that first 1 million free. It's because Steam is the best at showing off games that it can tell people, like almost like a YouTube algorithm. Like YouTube tests videos when they first come out and tries to find the right audience and make sure new creators get seen. I mean, I see on my feed sometimes on YouTube a video from someone with like 50 views and 10 subscribers, and I rarely click on it, but clearly they found something in the algorithm that said, well, everyone who's like Tom liked this video, so let's give this guy a chance. Steam does the same thing, promoting games on their front page in a way that no one else does well. I actually hear a lot of critical things about Sony, and so that alone probably is what I would say is, no, they're not horrible for indie devs. The indie devs love Valve because of that reason.
Yeah, and then I don't know, just two things to add to it. Like, I think this is I do think this is facetious, but I don't really think you can. I mean, maybe you can make the argument that like Steam is functionally a monopoly in like the PC gaming hardware, but like
it's really not.
Gaming. But like, from one perspective, like they're the dominant force for PC gaming, but like I've never heard an accusation really that like they like do monopolistic practices. Like Epic Game Store kind of failed, or I think it still exists, but like it never took off because Epic Game Store sucked and nobody likes using it except like when they do something like, oh, GTA 5 is free and people download GTA 5 because of that. Like, sure. And then I think Steam remains the dominant platform for PC gaming, or ecosystem is the word I was looking for PC gaming, I think, because it's an actual ecosystem. Like Steam tried to create like a big ecosystem that where it's functions as like a forum, social media, all of that, as well as just a game store where like everything else is very streamlined. It's not really attempting to be that like Steam is, and I think that just drives people to want to use Steam more, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a good point, is like, why is Steam successful? Why is Valve successful? Because their thing is still the easiest for the consumer to use. It is not because they tried to pull some monopoly practice where they just lock anyone else out. Like they're not going around and saying, hey, if you list your game on Steam, you can't list it anywhere else. They're like, do it, put it on Epic, see if we give a shit. And no one does. So that would be why gamers don't hate Valve, Carbon Cry. The question is not facetious. It is because they continue to be the most dominant because they're the easiest for the consumer to use. And yes, they charge more than a lot of other stores, but they started the whole business and everyone else charges less because their stores suck and they have to.
Yeah. I don't know. Like if that, I'm not saying I don't want like the devs to make money, like, but like if that's the only thing you can like, the only reason you can try to drive people to your platform, that'll convince some people, but it won't convince most people.
It's like when they're like, hey, Tom, I've had people from this company reach out to me. You want to go on Rumble? And I'm like, no. How much are you going to pay me to go on Rumble? And they're like, well, we take less of a cut of the profit. Yes, but I won't get discovered. Like,
and you'll also
like
be on
YouTube. And like YouTube like actually makes you get found and puts effort into that. And do I think they take too much of a cut of the profit? Maybe. They still claim to only take half of it. So you could argue that just that business model on their end's kind of struggling, or like there's just so much that you're not getting as much of a cut. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's really the same argument. I'm going to have to use YouTube because ultimately that is how I get found. And it's not just because YouTube's dominant, Carbon Cry. It's because YouTube has the best algorithm for serving you up the content you actually want to see, while still having the restraint to not just show you 1 minute clips over and over and over. They actually punish you if your video's too short sometimes or is clickbaity. So they're trying to kind of be a Netflix competitor that gets you noticed, and so you have to use it. It's the same with Valve.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. I thought it'd be a shorter one, but it turned out to be, everyone, including Dan's favorite word, an actual fairly girthy episode.
I do love it when you say that.
Yeah, as usual, my brain stops working. So let me just try to get through the shilling, if you will. Please, if you're watching, make sure you are subscribed to the Moore's Law Said YouTube channel. Please, subscribing helps the algorithm a ton. Also, ring the bell button so you get the notifications of the new content. Also, please make sure that you share the video, comment down below, give us hype points, like the video. And for the love of God, join the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon, especially if you're one of the free Patreon subscribers that's just there to see the updates. Maybe get a little free thing I throw out every now and then. If you're a free subscriber, join the $1 tier. You'll be able to ask us questions. Colin Moriarty is the next guest on Broken Silicon. I said earlier, probably literally just an email by Micah. Yes, he'll be coming on for the next episode. So no, like, please join us even at the lowest tier. You'll get access to dozens of die shrinks, access to asking guest questions. $2 tier, you get the Discord, hundreds of die shrinks, and I believe some other bonus content as well. And then the $4 or $5 tier, I should say, gets access to early ad-free Broken Silicon, free questions on live streams, and I believe there's actually other bonus content out there too, like other little projects like flyover states and hits and gems you get. So there's tons of content out there. whatever you can afford, that's negligible, whether you wouldn't notice $5, $2, or $1 a month. And it keeps us honest and helps put food on the table for Dan, me, Carbon Cry, and Gerard, and John Philippe, who is the renderer who gets you those cool things like the Zen 7 Pictures leak years before they've even manufactured one. I can show you them because I pay people like that. It does cost money. But otherwise, Dan, any final words?
I don't think so.
You never does think so. But
I don't. I rarely do. I have a couple times. But
okay. All right. Pushing back. Okay. But I do think that is it for this episode. So as always, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and have a good week.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Deke, Aaron Close, Jen Rauner, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jerem Ferriera, Velcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Compressed iBox, Halbuma, Shredbird, Semi Malas, Chris Anthenos, Jonathan, Tommy, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Gamers Unite, Winwang, Ian Clifford, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Zoot Suit Taylor, Mads, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, My Amiable Chief, Mark Mitchell, Aisha, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Matthew Cassell, Salty Internet Pirate, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Helxapuma, Teak Autumn, Reginald Ari, Little Journey, Win Star, James I. Raider Shea, Dan M. 1988, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, Justin Bustle, Oscar Haggerty, Joe Fitt, Brian Wright, Ryan Scanlon, Hardland, Slushball, Jensen, Ain't Game of the Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Bing Bong 3, John Swin, Solarized 80, Elber Gun, Keekum, Thalo 215, Sprutnik, Brian P, Cornster 671, Penta Winter, Omega Doge, Huger, Ander Kiwi, Smash Axley, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Kareem Al Masri, Rye Hill, Cheap Bulls, AI Soldier 789, Manolis Ragkusis, Kevin Kuntz, Bespoke EP, Jonathan Harris, Dominic Pesseri, Fred Berger, Kainush Kagani, Zabir Ahmed, Johnny Trans, Arkeo, RK0, Dudester, John Tiberius Mirika, Ian OMG Clover, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.